Hi, welcome to ThinkTech. We are raising public awareness about technology, energy, diversity, and globalization. This show is the diversity part of that code. We are the Arts in Hawaii. I am Donna Blanchard, very proud managing director of Kumukuhua Theater. I'm also the host of the Arts in Hawaii. We come to you live every Wednesday from 2 to 3 here from the studios in Pioneer Plaza in the heart of downtown Honolulu. Today I am talking with Daniel A. Kelin, who is the director of the current show at Kumukuhua Theater, Moa A Moi, written by Jean Charlot. And he is also the director of education for the Honolulu Theater for Youth. We're going to get to Dan in just a moment. First, I want to remind you that we broadcast every day of the week. We are live on ThinkTechHawaii.com. You can see us streamed live also on Spreaker.com and Ustream.tv. And if you would like to look at any of our archives, go to ThinkTechHawaii.com and you will see a myriad of shows on every topic you could ever want to explore within our code. Daniel A. Kelin is the director of drama education for Honolulu Theater for Youth. He has acted and directed across the U.S. as well as in India, China, the Marshall Islands, American Samoa, and Pompeii. Over a 17-year period, he produced 70 original plays by young writers in the HTY Theater Fest program. He served as president of the American Alliance for Theater and Education from 2012 to 2013, won an Arent Harris Children's Theater Foundation of America Playwriting Award, and the New Plays for Youth Theater Foundation of and the New Plays for Youth Audiences Award for his play Sing a Porpoise Home. There's a lot more about Dan that we're going to just get through to the show because within the show because there's some impressive stuff I want to make sure we hit on and don't just list. So without further ado, welcome Daniel Kelin. Very nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't come into a lot of contact at the theater usually as a part of the administrative team where, I'm leaving about the same time you're coming in with your cast. Yeah. Or if I hear you working with the cast, it's because I'm working on something. So I'm hearing really great things happening. I'm hearing an interesting directing style and a somewhat collaborative style. I'm enjoying all of that. And very often we put information in our programs and you read it for grammar, we proof it and that sort of thing. And it wasn't really until I was preparing for this show that I took a good look at it and said, wow, Dan's got a pretty impressive resume going on there.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think that your that background, that length of service to the arts that you have really comes across nicely in the show.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think, who was it? John Guare, the playwright John Guare, who when somebody asked him about a play that he wrote, they said, the simple question, how long did it take you to write this? And he said, all my life. I think that's, indicative of any piece of art that you're going to work on. It's not a matter of, did you spend 4 weeks on it? It's like everything that's come prior is, informs the choices that you make. You can't help that. So I think Moa, probably more than a lot of pieces, that I've done in Hawaii anyway, probably is a good representation of the kinds of things that are of interest to me and the kinds of theatrical work that I like being involved with. So
can you break that down?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of pieces, but essentially it's kind of storytelling as opposed to a straight play, which is something I enjoy a great deal. Whereas there's this kind of larger story that's being encapsulated within the play, as opposed to a play that maybe the time frame of it is a single day or a couple of days or a week's time with the kind of moment by moment events that go on in people's lives. I don't want to ever sound like I'm comparing, because I'm not. It's just a different kind of choice. But the story that captures big moments that glide through some of the daily things and get to the large events are things that are interesting to me, because that gives you the opportunity to break reality. And I'm not someone that's completely tuned into theater just being a representation of reality, but it's kind of commenting on, it's mirroring, it's building from. And it's playing with it's really physically and vocally and intellectually, emotionally playing with reality, such that we relook at our lives, we relook at the worlds we live in by having the adventure of these plays. So that idea of story as opposed to a straight storyline is one aspect that's very engaging to me. The other part is the idea of an ensemble working together to be able to create lots of the pieces in the play. Again, not with, Bob is cast as the first character and Fred is cast as the second character, but Bob and Fred are each playing 6 different characters, plus a rock, plus a giraffe, plus the water, and they get to do all these other things. And the audience gets to be brought into the story of the characters and then kind of thrown back out and see the theatrical conventions that let us construct and explore these worlds. And that's the kind of world I like, is that we see how theater works, but we never lose the magic of the theater at the same time. By watching how the theater unfolds in front of us actually makes the magic that much stronger. So in Moa, the actors each have the same basic costume, and then they each have one piece of cloth that they keep retying in different ways as they move from character to character. So they might be wearing them in 8, 9, 10 different ways. And to watch the actor walk to the side of the stage, sit right down next to you as an audience member, take that piece of cloth on, retie it, stand up, and re-enter, and have it a whole new character is a fascinating little thing. They haven't changed massively as an individual. They haven't changed massively in their costume. They've reconstructed themselves to be the new character, and a simple piece of cloth has helped visually just make a statement that, okay, we've changed here for a moment, but it doesn't have to be large scale to be able to capture our imagination. In fact, it's quite the opposite. What it's saying is, let's not replace your imagination as the audience. Let's pique your imagination, and have you fill in some of the missing pieces. Yeah, and so you become more imaginatively involved and engaged in the production. And I think that's another piece for me, is I don't want to replace everything. I don't want everything to be there and fill in. I want to subtract and let the audience then have to fill in some of the pieces and meet us part way. Yeah, which is hard for some audiences. Yeah, some of them want everything to be kind of clear and spelled out, and that's fine. But I like to say, you're part of our endeavor. Let's meet each other halfway and see what we come up with.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that audiences at Kumukuhua Theater expect, that they are they have some culpability in what's going to happen there. It is rare that we'll use a proscenium setup in the theater.
Yeah.
Do you think that is that why you do, has that facilitated the expansive work that you've done with children, because they are, more...
Oh, sure. I think there's no question. I mean, I can say that, an hour and a half ago, I was sitting in a 2nd grade class, and we're exploring a story about Anansi, the trickster spider, and how he's playing a trick on elephant, and he's stuck inside of a melon, and he makes it like the melon is talking. And to kind of reveal that moment in the story for the students, that Anansi is talking like the melon to trick elephant, there's just great joy in that little moment. And then to say, okay, we're going to get up and we're going to be that, bang, these kids are leaping into the air and starting to shape their body into these various ways to show how. And so it's amazing to just share a moment of a story, and there's this kind of rapture. I'm like, wow, the imagination is just filling every moment, and they're laughing, and it's completely genuine. And then the fact that they can put it in their own bodies and be able to explore it in their own way is magical, because that makes it more meaningful. And I think that's why I stay with children, is it keeps me imaginatively alive. I don't take things for granted. I realize that it's always necessary to dive deep into the imagination to make an entity like theater viable, and to make it engaging, to make it purposeful. It's the imagination. That's what it is. We've got to have a chance for the imagination to come alive, not to fill in, but to cultivate.
So the actual script that Jean Charlot wrote, was it more the construct of the script that attracted you, or the subject matter itself?
I think it was. I don't think it was the script itself per se. Although, like I said, I like story, so this one had those elements of this kind of epic story, so to speak. No, it was more that I was, at the same time, I was very engaged by the story of Umi Aliloa, something I discovered on my own. Not that it's not that it's not. It's easy to find it. I mean, it's there, but I just didn't know it because I was still fairly new to Hawaii when I first discovered it. And then the second part was just being in love with Jean Charlot's art. I just like the way that he, in my terminology, essentializes what he's looking at. A lot of his stuff chops out any unnecessary things that are just going to obfuscate what you're looking at and draw your eye very clearly to the things that he's interested in presenting within the art. Even the human body, you look at the art that he has, there's these they're almost geometric in
it's
ways.
very oblique.
Yeah. And that was fascinating to me because that matches this kind of epic story. It's like we're getting away from the pores and the warts and the blackheads or whatever that are part of your real life, and you're getting to this kind of cleaner story that delves into the bigger picture. So I think those two pieces, the Umi's story and Charlot's art, brought me to being interested in what he was writing. And then when reading the script, he's just got tons and tons of stage directions, and he's painting a world. He's not like actor moves left stage, actor exits. It's not that kind of thing for the most part. It's these kind of light and colors that go there. So it instead of telling you what to do, it's kind of inspiring you to possibilities. I'm sure he saw it very clearly and probably could have directed it very easily. It would have been like, here's the script, designers, let's capture that. But for me, it was just an inspiration that I could then set aside, with all due respect to him, and say, all right, now that I've been inspired, what's the vocabulary that I create that's in the world that I know, in the world that I work within in theater? Yeah. And so it was those combination of events that really, made me interested in this particular script story.
Did you know immediately? Well, okay, so you had been familiar with the story, then you found the script, and did you know immediately that you wanted to do this in the round?
Oh, no. No, the only thing I kind of knew right off the bat was I knew that there was another world that could be explored with this play that Charlot was hinting at but didn't write. And that's what I was interested in exploring. And then all the rest of it, the setting, the costuming, and even the setup of the stage came because of that. So Charlot's written a story of Umi. At the beginning, he starts out with an English language version of a creation type of chant. So it's not a direct translation of something, but it's his version of a creation chant. So he takes us way into the past. And then the last scene takes us into the future. And I'm not going to talk about that too much because that's part of the joy of going to the play. But he had this, past, present, future kind of journey in here. So he had a frame around it. To be honest, and put my cards on the table, it didn't all work for me exactly the way he had written it. And that's fine. Other people might defend it, and I'd love to have a conversation about it. But I just felt like there was a story about Umi, and I wanted to capture this tribute that he was playing to this character. And so what I did was then I said, okay, what if instead of having, because you've read the play, there's 29 speaking roles. Yeah. Instead of trying to cast 29 people, which would be nearly impossible. I mean, your dressing room, you wouldn't even fit them in there, yeah?
They'd be in my office.
I know, exactly.
No.
Yeah, they wouldn't move around on the stage. They'd just be shoved against each other. Was to bring it down to a small group of people as if they were coming to a place to pay tribute to a recently deceased king. So instead of it being that Umi is alive and here in this play, it's that we are playing out a story of this man who was recently our king and has since passed away. So the frame that you see in the theater is a frame that I've put around it with that idea to bring it down into this essential story of a tribute to a great man.
I think that honor comes through.
I hope
comes
so.
Through the work
I mean,
nicely,
I hope so.
Clearly.
It was nice when the Charlot people came and watched it, and they were all quite taken, with what we had done, and so.
Yeah. So we had a reception with the Jean Charlot Foundation and some people from the Jean Charlot collection, and I felt the same sort of trepidation. I think both of us were a little on edge when that all began. I knew that we had a really lovely product, and I knew that it honored the man, Jean Charlot, and his work, but you never know where you get, and these are not theater people.
Right.
And they were delighted.
Yeah, I think they did. They would. Yeah. And I think afterwards it makes sense. It's like they've got a vested interest in this going well and being something important. So I feel like they might have been like, oh, this isn't how I imagined it, but I don't think that got in the way. It's like they let themselves get swept up into the world that was created here at Kumu. So
Right. And that's something that theater can do that
definitely.
a painting cannot. You can involve yourself in a painting, it makes you feel a certain way, and you bring that conversation into your life, but when you are sitting in a theater breathing with the actors and you are the fourth wall.
Yeah, it's a very different kind of swept away than what the visual arts are. I mean, they have very different, the visual arts in many ways is a very individual kind of thing, whereas theater is very much more of a collaborative kind of endeavor there in the room.
Yeah, group project.
Yeah.
Oh, we have to take a break. We'll be right back. This is The Arts in Hawaii. I'm Donna Blanchard, your host. I'm talking with Daniel A. Kelin, and we'll be right back. Hi, we're back. This is The Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech Hawaii Digital Series. I am Donna Blanchard, your very proud Managing Director of Kumukuhua Theater and host of this show. I'm talking with Daniel A. Kelin, who is the director of the show that's currently running at Kumukuhua Theater. It runs through February 23rd. And tickets are selling at a clip, so make sure you give us a call and get yours. And hey, I never do this. 536-422-4111 is the number that you call for tickets. And you can go to kumukuhua.org to get them also. Is there anything else that you would like to add about this show in particular? What did you learn while working on this show? Wow.
Well,
that's a good question.
Well, yeah, it's a good question, but it's more, I laugh just because, the behind the scenes story is, the number of little thingies that came along that, were kind of obstacles thrown in our way it seems like trying to keep us from, accomplishing anything, because as you well know, we lost an actor along the way because of an unfortunate accident in his life. I mean, he's okay, but, it just kept him from being able to return to the rehearsals very late in the process. And then we struggled with, because I came on late to the project, finding other artists to help, round out the collaborative to put it together. And having a fairly small audition, so having to, reach out to other actors to find people that would be available and interested. Not that that's significantly different than a lot of theater that goes on in Hawaii necessarily, but it's just funny that, you put the show up and you're just like, hey, people can come and they like it or don't like it, but boy, all the stuff that goes on backstage sometimes can be an amazing thing and informs your memory of what, that process is. So even as you sit in the theater and watch it, it's like you can't forget all those other things that came, to get you to this place.
Right.
But I think, I'm quite pleased with it. I mean, the fun thing for me is two of the actors were once students of mine. The man that plays Umi, Tyler, was, I first worked with him when I think he was, 8th grade or something like that. And Andrea, same thing. She was probably a high school student or maybe an intermediate student when I first worked with them. So I saw them very early in the game, and then to come back to them and have them be in this production. A friend of mine, I worked with him there's two young people in the play, 14-year-olds. So that kind of continues the world that I generally work in with. So to have this kind of, spectrum of actors from high school students all the way up through experienced actors is kind of fun to see that mix and watching people grow into this. I think that the other part of it was, honestly, and I don't know if they'll all tell you that, but I think some of the actors were looking at me with crossed eyes when we first started doing this play. It's like, what are you doing? What is this thing?
Excellent.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's this scene that's the shark god, which it's hard, you don't even want to explain it without,
No, you have to see that.
You have to see it. And I remember very clearly when I first started saying, okay, here's what we're going to do, and they're just kind of like, they hardly did anything. They're like, what? Boy, this is embarrassing. I don't know if you know what I mean? There was just that kind of tangible sense in the room. But as we got near the end of the rehearsals, that's the one scene that they were all kind of digging. They took a full turn, and suddenly really enjoyed taking on the theatricality of those moments. And that's the kind of theater that I like, is where you take 4 pieces of bamboo, a bunch of bodies, a musical instrument, a little bit of light, and suddenly a shark god comes alive.
Yeah.
And it's nothing more than that, and it's very clear to the audience. It's 4 pieces of bamboo, it's a bunch of actors, it's a piece of music, and a couple of lighting instruments. But still, the magic of it can come alive in that world. So those are the kinds of things I think that I really enjoy about having done this particular production and be a part of it, is those challenges that paid off in a grand way that were hard to predict at first.
Yeah. Did you envision how that shark god was going to work when
No,
you
not
began?
particularly at first. I mean, I had a sense of it because I actually I've done things similar to this in the past. Because I directed a show in northern India a couple of years ago that was actually based on a folktale from Hawaii, and we did a little tinkering to make it more Indian. But there was a demon in it, and I turned to 5 of the actors and I said, "Okay, you're going to be one demon head to go figure it out." And again, it was the same kind of thing. Like, what are you talking about? And it was a lot of fun to watch, as that thing developed. And then we were using palm fronds in that play to make noise and to create a forest. And then the group took me over to Delhi to work on the same play with a different group of actors. And they were like, palm fronds aren't that's not here. You need something else. And it's like, well, gosh, what's prevalent here? And they're like, bamboo. All right. So we started to reconstruct it using bamboo. So I had to rethink the thing. So I think that's the fun part of it. Is I go, all right, we've created a world. For example, Moa, we want the world to exist in a cave. In the cave, what do we have available to us? We have vines, we have, and they just come from outside. Okay, we have bamboo, we have gourd. That's it. Everything has to be that. Mm. And so then it was like, okay, we'll figure out which ones will become which things.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it started. So I knew it was going to be based on these kinds of things. How it would end up looking, that I didn't know. We just played, and the actors created some things, and then Jonathan Seipert came in and created some things, and then Kalei Stern was getting some music in there, so we stuck some of that in there, and he was doing movement. So eventually it kind of constructed itself. I knew where I wanted to kind of end up, but I didn't know what it would be.
Kalei Stern's work with your group was really great. There is a score to this piece that is all created on the stage by the actors.
No, and that's exactly, those were one of those fortuitous things. It was like, I got to find a music person. It wasn't until the very last moment that I was able to get Kalei to come and be a part of it. And then I was never at rehearsal with him. I was always traveling, so he was at rehearsal, so I had no idea what he was doing. Some of the actors filmed things and put them on Facebook so I could see it. But it was really like, you guys have to work with Kalei and then carry it back to me, and then we have to play around with it. And then eventually Kalei comes back and comments on it, but we never really sat down and worked directly. And I'm fine with that. I'm very, I think that's just it, because he's going to bring an aesthetic to it that I can't imagine. And I don't want to say, here, do this. I want to say, this is what we're doing. Now, how do you find something that fits into that? And then we'll work with that once you've done it. Because I don't know how to say what I want, but once you do it, we'll figure out how that works within it.
Right. Well, and that brings so much more creativity to the table, too.
Exactly. So.
Can we talk about India? How did you end
sure.
up? What is this relationship you have with India? You went there on with a fellowship?
Well, actually, the first time I went there was really mundane. I like traveling, but I don't like traveling as a tourist. I find that very unsatisfying. I like to be there to interact with things. And there's many organizations where you can pay to be a volunteer on projects, and I had done that in the Caribbean, in Dominica, and I was trying to find another project like that, and I was just flipping through this book, and I saw there was this one about archaeology in India, and it sounded like kind of interesting because they were talking about interacting with the the local populace and stuff. And I was like, okay, I never thought twice about India, but here's a project that sounds neat. So at first I couldn't work it out. I contacted the person in charge of it. She was very nice. She said, anyway, eventually I did. So I went, and lo and behold, by the time we got there, the Indian government had changed their rules about archaeology, so outsiders really couldn't be involved in archaeology. So she had to change her process a little bit, and she took us into some schools to do art-based stuff. And it's like, oh my gosh, can you, I mean, of all the things here, And so I was going to work with another local artist, and because he came late, I started doing some of the work, and they liked what I was doing, so they split the group up and said, here, he works with them, you work with them. So I started creating projects with kids in schools in India just by happenstance.
What kind of projects?
It was just staging little stories. That's all it was. I mean, we only had a week with them. Many of those, handful of those students that were 8th graders now are all professionals now. One's a doctor, one's an IT professional. They're all on my Facebook page. We still keep in touch. And this was 2005 when I worked with them, and I haven't seen them much since then, but they stay in touch with that stuff. Awesome. So that got me kind of captured. And the group that I was working with, I was like, if I came back, would you be open for me, to do something? Like, completely. And I found a little fellowship, so I went back. Then I connected with this other artist who worked with children, so I went to his city and we did some work together. And then people kept saying, you should be applying for a Fulbright. So, I took a gamble. I said, okay, I'll try for a Fulbright, and got it. So I went back for 6 months and did work with that artist and with the schools that I worked with before, and then they connected me with other artists, and I connected with other cities. The State Department sent me to places, and I made connections in the North. So then when I went back again, I was working with the theater company in the North, so it was just like tumbling, one thing to the other. So the project of this directing project I was talking about from a couple years ago is a theater company a couple hours outside of Calcutta in the north. And they asked me if I'd come back and do some, train their actors in some education-based processes, and then they said, why don't you direct a play as well? So.
Oh, fabulous.
So my intent is to go back again very soon and to work with other folks that I've made connections with.
So let's talk about the training that you do, the work that you do on this island here through Honolulu Theater for Youth.
Yeah.
What's your average week look like, Dan?
Right now, it's crazy. The education department at HTY, we have 3 different kinds of programs that we do. Is school residency work, so work we do directly in the school, youth theater work, which is work we do outside of the school setting, and then the third one is professional development, and we do that for classroom teachers as well as for teaching artists that work in schools and whatnot. The bulk of our work is school residency, so I spend a great deal of time in schools. Like today, I'm 3/4 of the way through a residency at Kuhio Elementary School with 2nd graders. But I started the day out in Enchanted Lakes because I'm doing demonstration workshops for classroom teachers who are in a professional development workshop I'm teaching. So they're learning how to do this work in the classroom for me, and then I go to their classroom and show how I would do it so that they can learn how to do it themselves. So it was like a big class up in Enchanted Lakes, run back into town, several classes at Kuhio Elementary School. Tomorrow's the same. I'll be out in Waianae, doing demonstration, back in town doing Kuhio, and then after school program at Central Middle School with English language learning students, which is a drama video program that we're doing over there. So our days can be quite really mixed with a whole lot of different things, interaction with many different kinds of populations.
Do most of the schools on the island have some sort of drama?
No.
No.
Quite
Okay,
the
so that's
opposite.
you coming in for
And
a lot
not just
of
me.
that.
I mean, there's several drama educators around the island that do things, and so there's a fair bit of work that goes on. And a lot of us, cover a fair number of schools, but you're talking residency-based work. Some of them do longer ones that end up with production-based work, but often ours is exploratory work in the classroom. It doesn't culminate with performances, which is fine. It's an integrated kind of work. It's using drama as a tool to engage students deeper in their studies. So it's not just put the book in front of me, read the words on it, and then take a test. But it's, let's put the words up on the wall. Let's see what's deep inside of the story. Let's get up. Let's start to play out some of these moments. Let's talk a little bit about what we're discovering, what our interpretations of these moments are. So we get deeper seated learning of the reading. And in fact, there are studies, and some people might fight with this, but there are studies that show that for many students, getting up and being, involved, kinesthetically involved, their learning is that much greater than sitting down and just reading it and taking tests.
Oh, it has to be, doesn't it?
You would
It
like
has
to, yeah, you'd
multiply?
think so, but based on, sorry, this is gonna, this is a strong opinion, but based on the way our education system is in this country, you wouldn't know it. Yeah, our education system is very based on the way adults learn. I hate to say it, but that's my opinion. Is
Well, it's based on being quiet,
Yeah.
which is not natural
Exactly.
for that age, and reading and writing and arithmetic rather than working.
Yeah,
as
unfortunately,
parts
our
of
country, and
teens
again, we don't need to go down this path very far, but our country is very much involved with how do we make sure our children are going to make sure our country is great and makes a lot of money. It's like, well, that's using them. To me, it's not allowing them to make the choices of what they're doing. Why force someone to go into science or math or whatever if that's not what they want? Why not allow them to go the direction they want? Who cares if you make, $1 million being an artist? If that's what you enjoy doing, why shouldn't you have that opportunity? If we're the country of freedom, shouldn't that be the choice that you make as an individual? And then the second part is, if we can bring the arts in to then enhance the learning that goes on in science and math, why not that as well? If we all toss around quotes like, Einstein saying, the imagination was more important to me than anything else, well, isn't that the deal? Shouldn't we be cultivating that part of us as well? Not just the knowledge base, but the creative side as well.
Yeah. Well, for school-age kids, there are a lot of studies to prove the efficacy of arts related to test scores. We don't have that for adults. We don't have that study to say this is why it is important in your life to have art there. See what you can do about
so many people do, right? I mean, we turn on the TV, we watch the movies, we read books, we go to, art is a part of our everyday life. You buy your phones based on how they're designed. Isn't that art?
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah, but it's a luxury.
Right, yeah, that's true.
This is the view that sitting at home and watching a movie is not productive time.
Right, well, that depends, I guess, how you look at it.
Yeah. I'm not arguing.
No, I understand.
It's just my show, so I have to say things like this. So let's talk about the books that you've written. You've written 5 books.
Yes, I guess it depends on how you count it, but yeah, somewhere in that framework. My first book is a collection of legends and stories from the Marshall Islands, because I've spent over 20 years traveling and working over there. And very early in the game, the woman that first brought me out there, Darlene Keju Johnson, who's unfortunately long since passed away, she was interested in working in health and social issues, but she also wanted to reconnect kids with sense of culture. So I traveled around the different islands, and I went and met with storytellers and asked them to share stories with me, and they did. They were very generous, because I was bringing it back and working with young people in the Marshalls to stage these folkloric pieces as pieces of theater that we would do in the islands. And just so happened I ended up with a lot of stories, so local press, Best Press asked if I could make a book, and I was like, yeah, completely. So that was the first one, and then the other books past that have mostly been about work that I do for teachers. Yeah, so a book about using oral histories in the classroom with drama, a book about doing drama with English language learning students. So things manuals that teachers can use to enhance their work.
Oh. And do you, so are you using the books when you are working with teachers?
Sometimes, yeah. Depends on the situation. Each situation is a little different, but yeah, many teachers have them, in their library now, because they got copies of them while I was teaching them.
The work that you do with the teachers is it's funded by HTY?
It's funded from many different, the money comes from many different avenues. Like the Hawaii Community Foundation has been very generous over the years. We've had several different kinds of grants that have come through them to support literacy-based work using drama. But we've had support from the National Endowment for the Arts. I couldn't even, off the top of my head, even list all the different organizations that one time or another have provided funding for these kinds of initiatives.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When you work with the teachers, when you are working with a new teacher, is there generally openness and a very receptive attitude, or is there a little fear?
Yeah, there's fear, definitely. I think that fear is exacerbated by being in this part of the world. We're a little less wanting to to stand out and draw attention to ourselves here. You know, that's not the you know, the right thing to do, so to speak. You know, kind of keep it quiet and, you know, fade into everything. You know, if you're on the East Coast, I hate to generalize, but if you're on the East Coast, you know, that's a world of very, you know, strong, you know, personalities that stand and try to be an individual. And here's
You
more
want to be
about-
noticed, yeah, that's how you get ahead.
So with teachers, you know, often they, you know, there's many that avoid doing what we do because they're afraid of that sense, I'm not an actor, I'm not creative, and it's essentially trying to say to folks, that's not the point. The point is, as a teacher, you're facilitating that work in children. So what I'm teaching you to do is to be the facilitator of that creative work, not the purveyor of that. That's the difference. And so when I bring in teachers, yes, they have to first be the students, so they become the creative forces in the classroom, but only as examples to themselves about how it feels to be a student with that work. And they can have a kind of, oh, wow, that really made me think about this differently, which I can imagine this would really spark the interest of my students and grab their attention. And often what happens is they go in the classroom and they start to do this work, and then they go, suddenly I saw 4 kids that I've never seen before come alive in a way that I didn't know that they had these things going on in them. It's like, yeah, because all you've ever done is one kind of teaching. Yeah, one skill set, and suddenly you've tapped into another skill set. So the funny thing about doing the creative arts is, and the teachers discover this all the time, is those that are higher academic learners tend to not do so well on the creative side because they've got more of a fear of taking a chance and being wrong. Whereas those that don't do so well academically, they're ready to let rip. They're bigger risk takers. They're interested in getting involved. They don't want to sit down and, you know, and learn the right way. They want to get up and be part of it.
I don't know if it's so. I have a very brilliant nephew who's a doctor, and when he was young, I could hardly get him to take a picture. I would try to get him to do something artistic with me, and I don't know if it's so much fear as his brain really wanted everything to be lined up neatly.
And I think that's the fear that you're going to do it the wrong way. It's going to come out in a way that you don't want it to be. You have this high expectation of what it should be, and if you don't get it the first time, you're disappointed and it's like, I can't do this. Whereas a creative artist knows that it's a journey. You're not going to get it right the first time or the second or the third or the fifth or the 27th. And then when you get to it, you're going to be like, okay, it's done, but I still don't like it.
And
it can still get better. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is that those that tend to be more academically gifted just put too much pressure on it. And that's where the fear in my parlance comes from, is, you know, it can't be what I expect it to be, therefore I can't do it.
I do. It's an inability to embrace chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And he's curing cancer, so
Well,
if he doesn't embrace chaos,
that's
I'm
all right.
fine with that.
He's being creative in his own way.
Yes. Yeah, he is. Oh, okay. We're gonna take another break.
Sure.
This is Ian, by the way. We'll be right back. This is the Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech Hawaii Digital Series. I'm Donna Blanchard, talking with Daniel Kelin. We'll see you in a moment.
We want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
I'm Nicole Horry. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
Hi, we're back, and we are live in the studios at Pioneer Plaza in the heart of downtown Honolulu. I'm Donna Blanchard, talking to Daniel A. Kelin of HTY and current director of the show Moa A Moi at Kumukuo Theater, which is my theater. I would like to talk about the HTY Theater Fest, if we may.
Yep.
Can you tell me everything there is to know about that? What is it?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is it doesn't exist right now, but that's just a reality of the time. But I think what made that such a standout program, and people still talk about it to this day. In fact, people like who we talked about before, Tyler and Andrea, who are in Moa A Moi, both were part of Theater Fest when they were younger. Daniel Akiyama, who's one of the playwrights that have been at Kumu.
Yes,
Susan
fabulous.
Stanton, who's been a playwright at Kumukua. All these were Theater Fest students at one time or another. Theater Fest was founded by my predecessor, Brian Clark, and it was founded because he started a young playwrights program because he was a playwright and he really wanted to tap into that. This is back in the kind of mid '80s, and in the first year that he put together a young playwrights program, he had, I don't know how many students anymore, but he had a handful of students that went through a program for 6 weeks. They wrote plays, and they submitted them to what was then called the Henry Fonda Young Playwrights competition at the Kennedy Center. And lo and behold, one of them won. And so it was like, oh, we got a winner, we need to highlight this in some way. So he created the Theater Fest program to produce some of the plays that had been written as part of that Young Playwrights program. That was when I first joined HTY, so I was in the first year at Theater Fest directing one of the Young Playwrights works. And one of the young actresses I worked with is, she's had a recurring, she's one of the main characters in Gilmore Girls. Yeah, so there's Theater Fest people all over the place.
Which one?
Christine, Keiko Agena. Yeah.
I didn't go past the first season.
Okay, that's fine. I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but
okay.
you know, there's just little connections all over the world. That's always any program.
Nice.
But essentially what happened was, because that went so well, we decided to make it an annual thing. So we would, every fall, we would have a young playwrights program. I'm sorry, every spring we would start, okay, let me get this right. Every fall we would start a young playwrights program, which we called the Pacific Young Playwrights. And that group would start right around the time that we were producing the previous year's groups. So that the young playwrights would come to Theater Fest and see what their predecessors had written and productions looked like. Then they would go through several months of a playwriting program themselves, and then we would choose a small handful of those to produce the next fall.
How often were they meeting?
We were meeting once a week. Once a week. We were meeting on Saturdays. And so Theater Fest then, when we chose the place to produce, we had auditions for young people. So it was all young people except for the directors. But for a few years, I actually took some of the ones that had been in Theater Fest a few times and had them try their hand at directing as well, just to give them a chance to see what that was like. So over 17 years, we produced 68 original plays in Theater Fest. How many plays were generated out of the young playwrights, you know, I don't know the total number. But the lovely thing for me is that just within the past month, I finally completed a Google site where every one of those plays is now up on the Google site, so you can see every single production throughout the history of Theater Fest in video. We digitalized every single one of them, and so you can see the whole canon online.
How cool!
Yeah, and this was in celebration, I think, of the work that these, and they're, you know, I keep in touch with a lot of these. I mean, some of the students I first worked with are probably nigh on their 40s now. But it was kind of unmatched at the time. There wasn't that going on in town. Since then, other people have done that kind of stuff. Like TAG has been doing a program with young playwrights in its own way in the past few years, and some schools have done it. But at the time, that was all that was going on with young playwrights. And it started out as a kind of simple program, but then we got more intense, because at first it was like, let's see who's good at writing a play, they'll write a play, and then we're done. And then I kind of changed it over time to say, it's not that. I would like to teach those that maybe aren't so good at it to be better at it. So let's make it a more intense program where they really have to develop, you know, their skills. And you could talk to Daniel Akiyama or Susan Stanton and talk about the trials of going through that process of really diving deep to become a better writer. And then, you know, we would find plays. And we played around. You know, in the first years, it was like we'd do 3 or 4 plays. They'd be half an hour each in length. Later on, I was finding that some of them were writing these short plays and weren't capable of longer things, so we created what was called the Theater Fest Briefs. So we'd do these 5-minute plays that we would be a handful of them. We did some 15-minute ones, some 10-minute ones. And then we played around to the point where for a couple of years we We had somebody that wrote a keychain play, and we sold keychains with a little play on it, and we had postcard plays, and so we'd sell the postcards to raise money, and they would have little plays on the postcards, and we were just playing around with different things that we could do to just see where the writers could, because I was really like, people would say, well, this is how you write a play. It's like, what do you mean this is how you write a play? Who discovered that? I think any playwright you talk to would tell you there's probably no way to write a play. It's, you learn the way to, your way to write a play. And that was my journey, was like, no, don't say that's what it has to be. Let's figure out what you're doing, cultivate that so you find your style. You find the way you're speaking as a playwright. And if that means it doesn't match Neil Simon or, David Mamet, who cares? That's not the point. You're not supposed to be the next David Mamet. You're supposed to be the Daniel Akiyama or the Susan Stanton. Yeah. That's what I want to see. And so we allowed that experimentation to happen. And we even did it when we produced the plays. We would do pre-show little things that the cast could be a part of that would really break the dynamics of normally, presenting theater with a curtain and a blackout and all those other things that,
Like what?
Well, we would play music and have the actors, we would choreograph this kind of movement-based thing that would just be thematically maybe related to some of the plays. It threw some people off for a loop. They had no idea how to deal with it. And it was like, okay, well, it was a nice attempt, but the kids loved it. They ate it up. They looked forward to those things, and that was what I was there for. I was there for them first. And we had some plays that really pushed the envelope of people understanding them. And it's like, okay, so just recognize the fact that the audience struggled a little bit and know why you did that. But that's for you to learn from. It's not for me to just say, no, that play's not going to work for an audience, because I'm going to say, what audience? Where? Of what age? Each audience is going to look at it differently. That's the thing we used to always talk about, is the kids would say, how do I make sure this reaches the audience? It's like, which audience? Let's imagine that you got an audience and you've got a mother and a daughter sitting there. You write a play about a mother and a daughter. Which side do you think each of these women is going to be on? Depending on how you write that play, more than likely, one of them's going to, side with one of the, and that's just the nature of the beast. So don't try to write to the audience. Write what you think is the right piece, and then let it reach who it's going to reach.
So, what is the common thread for all of the writers would have to be? You're telling a story.
You're telling a story, and you tell the story that you want to tell. And let's figure out the way you tell that story that really services that story. So instead, if it needs to have a narrative into it, then let's put a narrative into it. One young man was much more interested in interaction between characters and not dialogue. So the only piece of dialogue in the whole story was the word "hey," and that's all the characters said to each other, "hey." And the whole story plays out with the difficulty between a son and a father. And the son doesn't learn about the importance of interacting with his father until he abuses a turtle, of all things. It's a very strange play. But all they ever said was, "hey," and that just worked really well for the style of what his play was. So it was saying, let's discover what your story is, who your characters are, and the way you want to tell that story.
Did you get into why you want to tell that story at all?
Well, I think the thing is that for some of them, that's something they learn later.
Yeah.
I had a young woman that was a young player. She doesn't write plays anymore, but she's still a writer. She wrote 5 plays that we produced over her tenure as a young player. She's a very good playwright. And it wasn't until after she was done with all 5 plays that we stepped back and we were like, look, Nance, here's the journey of your life. What you've done is you've captured moments in your life as an 8th grader, as a 9th grader, as a 10th grader. She had no clue. Oh. But it really just was like forming friendships, losing friendships, dealing with stepping out into the real world, a family falling apart, romance. You just could kind of track her own growth as an individual through her plays. And that's what it came down to, is all these plays were just a representation of where they were in their lives. But it's hard to talk about that because that's where they are in their lives. Mm-hmm. And so the play just needed to allow that to speak. And then someday they'd come back and go, oh, I see what I was feeling at that time. But the play is the venue for that kind of catharsis. But you can't say, oh, you're having a catharsis, write it down. Do you know what I mean?
Right, when you're in the thick of it.
Exactly.
Well, and I would say that as an artist, the plays that I've been most drawn to work in or to work on as a director have been meaningful to me at that point in my life for very specific reasons. And when I look back on it, I wouldn't want to play those roles again.
Right. Yeah.
And as an audience member, the shows that we are attracted to are specific to who we are at that moment.
That's what I think is the gift of theater in general. You know, the movies and television, and I have nothing against those medium, but they often are forced to play to a more common denominator to try to make the money they need to make to survive.
Is the word that
Yeah.
comes to mind. Yeah.
You know, and theater, unfortunately, gets forced into that dynamic often. But places like Kumu, you know, is a place to celebrate because, you know, you have to make the money to stay alive. But that's not essentially why you do with the work that you're doing. You're telling those stories that need to be told that match this community. And I think that's the beauty of what theater can do, is be able to touch in with those audiences. You could argue that Kumu would not be successful if it was in a 500-seat house.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
That's
It
not-
needs that intimacy. And that means it's going to have a certain economic reality. But I think that's the beauty of that theater. There's some theater that's for certain audiences, and let's celebrate that. Let's not try to make it for everybody. Why does it have to be that way? You know, allow it to reach those people that are interested in that and let their story be told.
And I would argue, we just do 5 productions a year at Kumukuhua. I think it's important to come see all 5 of them, regardless of how you feel about them, to be a part of supporting the organization.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to support the organization financially so that we do not have to worry about
Right.
sales. We never
Yeah.
have to raise our prices. We invite everyone in and not worry about it if this isn't a show for
And that's the
everyone.
kind of theater. I mean, people are going to support a theater like yours for that very reason. And I think HTY is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's made a very definitive choice. Let's represent our place and our people. Let's not do, you know, Christmas Carol every single Christmas just to make bucks because everybody's going to come out of the woodwork to say. In fact, it doesn't even work in Hawaii. You can't get the audience to come out to
pick another one.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I think that's just it. Is we allow ourselves to, you know, to firmly stay there, and that's what makes people want to support it.
Yeah. I'm proud of both the work that both of us
Yeah,
do, both of our
me too.
theaters.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I really enjoyed the conversation
That's
with
great.
you, and I'm sorry that I have to wrap up. So we'll invite him back.
Yeah.
I have to read things now. We are out of time and we have to wrap up. I'm Donna Blanchard of Kumukuhua Theater. This show has been the Arts in Hawaii on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series. If you would like to see other shows that we have had with the Arts in Hawaii and any other shows from the ThinkTech digital series, go to thinktechhawaii.com and you can find us there. Thank you very much for being here so that we can be here. Thank you to Ian Davidson, who is in my ear. He is the production manager. Chrissy Goffigan is our communications director. And thank you to Jay Fidel, who somehow manages to put this all together. Thank you, and we will see you next week. Bye.